You ever have one of those moments where the entire world narrows down to a single sound? For me, it was the metallic, final clang of a brand new steel gate slamming shut across the only bridge I've ever known as home. The echo bouncing off Silver Pine Lake like a judge's gavel sentencing me to exile from my own blood. I'm standing there in faded Carhartts and boots older than most mortgages, coffee going cold in my hand, watching Victoria Langford step out of her gleaming white Mercedes G-Wagon like she's descending from Mount Olympus instead of terrorizing a quiet lake community in northern Idaho. Designer sunglasses reflecting the sunrise, clipboard clutched like a holy relic, lips painted the exact shade of fresh arterial blood. She doesn't even look at the bridge first. She looks at my 1998 Ford pickup parked in front of the 1943 fishing cabin my grandfather built with his own war-trembling hands. The truck that still has pine sap on the tailgate from the summer I was 12 and learned how to back a trailer down this exact road. And she smiles that smile. Tight. Practiced. The one that says I've already won and you're too slow to realize it yet. Mr. Caldwell, she announces to the empty morning air, as if the pines and the loons and the ghosts of every fish my grandpa ever landed need to hear her verdict too. This vehicle constitutes unauthorized storage on community access property. The fine is $2,000, plus $100 per day until removal. You have 10 days. I feel it rise in my chest like floodwater, slow, dark, unstoppable. The same rage that used to swell in Grandpa when the county tried to tax his bridge back in '58. The same rage he taught me to swallow until the moment was right, because a Caldwell doesn't swing wild. A Caldwell waits, measures twice, cuts once. My name is Ryan Everett Caldwell, 34 years old. Senior structural engineer for a company that builds bridges capable of surviving Icelandic blizzards and Chilean earthquakes, the kind of bridges that carry entire cities on their backs. And right now I'm staring at a woman who thinks she can find me for breathing on land my family has owned since before her grandparents were born. The cabin behind me is small, 1,200 square feet of honest cedar and stone, built the year Grandpa came home from the Pacific with shrapnel in his leg and nightmares in his eyes. Built it with lumber he milled himself, nails he straightened and reused because waste was a sin. Built it on 3 acres of waterfront that smell like pine pitch and freedom, and every summer evening, he spent teaching a scared kid how to cast a line and how to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. That bridge, that beautiful, stubborn, over-engineered single-lane masterpiece of 1943 cedar and sweat, is the only way in or out. And Victoria Langford just locked it. She has no idea she didn't just declare war on a man. She declared war on a memory, on a promise, on a dead hero who built that bridge so his children's children would always have a way home. The first month was death by 1,000 certified letters. Every time I flew in from Copenhagen or Santiago, there was another stack waiting at the tiny post office in Cedar Hollow. Envelopes thick with legal threats, glossy photos of my truck circled in red like crime scene evidence, demands for payment, threats of liens, promises of towing at my expense. Victoria installed floodlights that turned my bridge into a prison yard at night, hired a security company to log every crossing, started a private Facebook group called Crystal Shores Aesthetics Watch, where neighbors posted pictures of my abandoned cabin like it was a crack house instead of the place where I learned what love sounds like when it's quiet and smells like coffee and wood smoke. I could have exploded. God knows I wanted to. There were nights I sat on the dock with a bottle of Maker's Mark and the wind off the lake so cold it burned, imagining marching up to her ridiculous Tuscan-style McMansion with the fake bell tower and the 3 fountains that ran $400 a month in electricity just to prove she could. Imagining telling her exactly what I thought of people who measure other people's worth by the year of their vehicle or the square footage of their ego. Instead, I did what Grandpa would have done. I went to the county courthouse every chance I got. Spent 12-hour days in the basement records room that smelled like mildew and broken dreams, fluorescent lights buzzing like hornets, running my fingers over deeds so old the ink had bled into the paper like bruises, tracing property lines drawn when this lake was still just a rumor on a trapper's map. And there it was, written in Grandpa's careful engineer's hand from 1943, before the army took him, before the war tried to kill him and failed. Together with the bridge structure in fee simple absolute, and a perpetual easement for ingress and egress limited to reasonable residential use not to exceed 12 vehicle crossings per day. 12. Crystal Shores has 49 homes. 49 families who bought into Victoria's promise of gates and rules and the illusion that money can buy peace. 49 families who now owed their daily commute to the goodwill of a man they'd never bothered to meet. That's when the smile started, small, private, the kind that doesn't show on your face but warms you from the inside like good bourbon on a bad night. But Victoria kept swinging. She poured concrete, landscaping features that somehow only blocked trucks with Idaho plates, filed emergency condemnations claiming my bridge was minutes from collapse, called the state engineering board to question my profession because clearly anyone who lived in a 1943 cabin must be incompetent, hired private investigators to dig through my travel records like 6 months in Denmark building wind farms made me a flight risk instead of a man trying to keep the lights on in a world that keeps forgetting how. Every attack just added another layer to the case I was building, quiet, methodical, the way you reinforce a bridge one cable at a time until it can carry the weight of the world without a tremor. I started making friends whether I wanted to or not. Old Man Whitaker, 81, Marine Corps lifer who flew the biggest American flag Victoria had ever seen and told her to pound sand when she tried to fine him for it. Lila Chun, retired paralegal with a mind sharp enough to cut diamonds and a filing system that would make the NSA jealous. Marcus Reed, local reporter who'd been threatened with lawsuits for asking why the HOA treasury was missing 34 grand. Elena Kowalski, 87 years young, who cried when Victoria made her take down the bird feeders that had been there since 1968 because they attracted undesirable elements. We met after dark at Lila's kitchen table, coffee strong enough to strip paint, pie cooling on the counter like peace offerings, legal pads spread out like battle plans, and we built something stronger than any gate Victoria could buy. Every forged invoice, every midnight crowbar attack on my bridge caught in 4K, every recorded phone call where her lawyer accidentally admitted they were counting on the owner not knowing his rights, every dollar traced from the HOA account to Victoria's personal, consulting, company that never consulted on anything except her Nordstrom bill. All of it went into folders color-coded and cross-referenced and backed up in 3 separate countries. Because I build bridges for a living. And bridges don't just carry people home. They carry truth, and truth, when it finally arrives, weighs a hell of a lot more than any lie Victoria Langford ever told. November 14th. The Cedar Hollow Community Center smelled like burnt coffee, desperation, and the kind of justice that's been waiting 80 years to be served. 247 people crammed into a room built for 150. Standing room only. News crews from 3 states. County sheriff leaning against the back wall with his arms crossed and the faintest smile you've ever seen on a man who's about to watch karma collect with interest. Victoria stood at the podium in a blazer that cost more than my annual truck insurance. Hair perfect. Makeup perfect. Smile brittle enough to shatter if you breathed on it wrong. PowerPoint slides glowing with aerial photos of my bridge circled in red and labeled imminent structural failure, public safety crisis, proposing a special assessment of $18,000 per household to acquire and replace the hazardous private structure with something more befitting her vision of suburban perfection. She never saw me stand up. She was too busy basking in the silence she mistook for consent. I walked to the front slow, boots loud on the tile like gunshots in church, laptop under my arm, and the room went so quiet you could hear hearts breaking and mending at the same time. Before we vote on stealing my grandfather's bridge, I said, voice calm enough to freeze the lake solid, maybe we should talk about who's actually been stealing from every single one of you for the last 36 months. Then I hit play. Bank records big enough to wallpaper the room. $52,000 vanished into thin air and reappeared in Victoria's personal accounts through fake invoices for landscape consultation and aesthetic enhancement planning. Audio of her offering me 20 grand to disappear recorded legally in a one-party state. 3:14 a.m. security footage of the HOA president herself swinging a crowbar at century-old cedar like a lunatic because property damage is easier than admitting you're a thief. The room didn't gasp. It roared. Old Man Whitaker stood up first, voice shaking with 81 years of gravel and glory. told how Victoria threatened to lean his house over a flag. Lila Chun laid out the original charter clause that made every single one of Victoria's property claims legally worthless. Marcus Reed projected the forged loan documents she tried to take against the HOA reserves. Elena Kowalski, tears in her eyes, held up the bird feeder Victoria made her remove and said, "This woman took joy from an old woman because she could. Tonight we take it back." And when the state fraud investigator took the microphone and said the words felony embezzlement, felony forgery, federal mail fraud, and we're just getting started, Victoria Langford finally understood the difference between a gated community and a prison cell. She screamed. She cried. She tried to blame me for forcing her to steal, actually shrieked, "He made me do it," on camera, while her lawyer attempted to wrestle her back into her seat like a rabid animal. They cuffed her right there under fluorescent lights that made her look suddenly, shockingly human. Mascara rivers, hair escaping its helmet, manicure chipped where the cuffs bit in, and as the sheriff led her past the people she'd terrorized for years, someone started clapping, slow, deliberate, then the whole room. Thunder that rattled the windows and tasted like every sunrise my grandpa ever watched from that bridge. For months later the headlines wrote themselves. Crystal Shores president sentenced, 34 months federal prison, $78,000 restitution. Historic Caldwell Bridge declared state landmark, protected in perpetuity. Former HOA treasury restored. New board elected with 100% vote. I bought Victoria's foreclosed monstrosity for 17 cents on the dollar. Tore out the marble fountains. Turned the manicured lawn into a community garden where kids now grow pumpkins bigger than their heads, and Elena's bird feeders hang from every tree like medals. Every October we throw the Whispering Creek Bridge Festival, bonfires that light up the lake like molten gold, veterans telling lies and grilling steaks, kids chalking murals that wash away with the first snow but live forever in photos, music drifting across water older than any of us. And every year I walk out onto those same planks at sunset, boots creaking the way they did when I was 8 and Grandpa's hand swallowed mine whole. And I talked to a man who never got to see the ending. He started writing with bleeding hands in 1943. I kept her standing, Grandpa. The bridge held. We held. And the water still runs free. But here's what still claws at me some nights. Boots hitting the floor at 3 a.m., heart racing like the gates slamming shut all over again. When does justice cross the line into vengeance wearing a better suit and carrying an 80-year-old deed? I ended a woman completely, publicly, permanently, took her freedom, her reputation, her future, everything she'd stolen, and more. Was that righteousness, or just the longest, coldest, sweetest revenge in the history of Northern Idaho? Tell me in the comments. No filters, no judgment, just real talk between people who know what it feels like when someone tries to lock you out of the only place your grandfather's ghost still walks. And if you're staring at your own gate right now, your own Victoria measuring your grass with a ruler and a smirk, DM me. The Bridge Keepers group is 52,000 strong and growing every day. Engineers, lawyers, paralegals, grandparents, veterans, kids who just want to fish in peace. All of us ready to help you hold your line. Because some things are built to last. Cedar planks, family promises, the sound of water running under a bridge your grandfather laid with hands that shook from war, but never from fear. And some people like Victoria Langford, they're just speed bumps on the road home. See you in the next one. And Grandpa, the loons are calling again. Your bridge is still carrying us. And we're still carrying you.